So here we have a standard independent contractor agreement. In this agreement is typically for retaining an independent contractor, a self-employed individual, typically for the supply of services to a corporation. So here you'll write in the recital the description of the contractor and the services that they'll provide. In a general, 1 or 2 lines typically sufficient there. In the first clause, you'll see the term of the agreement, when it'll start, when it'll end, and the services. Now the services, the specific services will be set out in a schedule. And you will establish, what exactly the contractor will be doing for you. Quite important here that the contractor shall determine the means by which it performs the services. So, for an independent contractor, what you are establishing is the scope of the work, but the contractor is free to decide how that work is performed or carried out. You don't supervise the independent contractor as such. You'll provide access to the equipment, to your premises rather, and the contractor will supply typically his own equipment. Very important in clause 3 is the establishment of an independent contractor relationship. So here it says that the contractor is and shall remain at all times an independent contractor and not an employee or dependent contractor of the client. Right? That's really important because you don't want to establish an employment relationship because the Employment Standards Act will apply and you'll have many more obligations than you would really need. You must establish that the client, wouldn't have any liability or responsibility for income or payroll taxes, and that the contractor is responsible for any personnel that they have. Here you'll write the amount per day or the fees associated with the contract, and whether or not the contract will supply an invoice and under what basis. There's a note about fee disputes and how they are going to be paid. So anything that's undisputed, how that'll be paid. The contractor should represent that they have the required skill and experience and qualifications to perform the services, that they are to provide services in a professional manner that's accepted within the industry standard. Indemnification, clause 6 here, refers to the case where the contractor has done poor work, for example, and now you are being sued as it's your responsibility. An indemnification clause means that the contractor is going to be required to provide to pay you in the event of any losses that are directly flowing from their negligent behavior, or any bodily injury or death, as well as any breach of representation or obligation under the agreement. Typically, you'd want to have the contractor to have commercial liability in force, and you can determine what their maximum contractual liability coverage will be in this clause 7.1. Here in 8, you'll see that either party can terminate without cause for a number of days written advance notice, and you can establish what that is. Then you can either have either party terminate the agreement immediately for cause without advance notice or payment in lieu of such notice. And then upon the expiration of the agreement, you would require the client or rather the contractor, to deliver any documents or copies that are confidential and erase them. So you can add a confidentiality agreement. There's one for that as well. But this clause states that that any information shared is going to be regarded as confidential information. Then you have in clause 9 some miscellaneous clauses that the agreement is binding to the benefit of both parties, as well as the governing law. So here, let's say you're in Ontario, you'd write Province of Ontario, for example, and so that this is where any dispute would be litigated. And lastly, you would incorporate by reference a number of documents. You'd name the documents here, as well as any schedules, and these form what's known as the entire agreement. So it will supersede any negotiation, any oral agreement that you've made, or representation. So we'll just look at this document from now on as considered showing the complete intention of the parties informing that contract. And lastly, you have a signature page where you'll sign, and that's the end.